Mamma mia!
Super Mario Galaxy is a platforming video game that takes place in space. Unlike most games which try to convince you that their environments are all contained in one continuous world, Mario Galaxy breaks its levels up into separate chunks called planetoids that the player hops between as they progress. It's a very unapologetically video-gamey video game, and it follows its space theme very whimsically. Now, most of this game's levels do take place in the backdrop of space, and many explore gravity mechanics and other spacey things, but there are some levels that flat out drop the space pretense altogether, which is when things get very abstract. For example, here's a level that takes place in a giant children's playroom, which is very much a vibe in itself. But my favorite levels are ones like these. These ones take on a more earthy theme and are cast against an immaculate blue sky. There's something about these levels that really resonate with me on a psychic level, and I just want to share that feeling with more people. I was originally going to write a carefully constructed script where I would try and pinpoint my feelings and explain them as thoroughly as I could, but after some thought I figured, if I really want to convey the sense of being present in these spaces, maybe it'd be better to do so through a more live commentary style rather than barrage you with a wall of meticulously written words, like I'm doing right now. Hopefully my scattershot descriptions and my editing can gently guide you to interesting conclusions rather than strictly shepherd you there. Ideally, it'll be more relaxing for you and less work for me. So I encourage you to sit or lay back and enjoy as I give you an easygoing, improvised, not super structured sightseeing tour through some of Mario's lush skyscapes. So this galaxy really demonstrates how Mario Galaxy's art style sort of extruded out from its level design. So like when the game designers were creating this game, they, I think, started with the technology. Like I remember seeing a demo for like the GameCube or something where they were messing with these planetoid concepts and like first sort of experimenting with creating levels that were based around gravity and whatever. And I think Mario Galaxy, like the concept of it taking place in a galaxy, was sort of their way of packaging the weird kind of abstract level design that they were creating with these weird new sort of, I guess, like technologies they had. They felt like they could most easily sort of sell the concept of that under the setting of it taking place in a galaxy, basically. Like obviously this doesn't really look like it takes place in space, does it? Space doesn't look like this. It's a very whimsical approach to the concept of space, and I think this galaxy really kind of shows that. And it is very, very strange seeing that when you kind of sit back and look at it and kind of remove the context of it being a video game. You know, when you just like go into first person, you forget about Mario, you phase out the HUD, and you kind of look past all the weird video gamey like tokens you see laying around and whatever. I would say it's a work of accidental surrealism. A lot of this game is that, if you ask me, and I think this is a really good example of that. Just these suspended, floating masses of land that are just floating there with no concept of physics. I love like the gusts of wind and the what are those, like pieces of pollen? What are those supposed to be? I guess they're like dandelion tufts. It feels very springtime. It feels very like fresh and lush and warm, but it takes place in space and it's very strange. It's just very strange seeing these really conventional kind of everyday things twisted into this non-Euclidean, is that a good term to use? Non-Euclidean? Whatever, I'm just like vomiting out words. And yeah, that's all I have to say about this area. It just really, really something to see these like strange, like not cartoony, just not Mario-ish, not extremely Mario-ish assets floating in midair. Anyway, moving on. Okay, next up is this area. This is Sea Slide Galaxy, I think. Really great example of sort of everyday textures and colors. Things like grass and dirt and sand and water that you're seeing on the screen. And just like shapen and formed into these really strange but satisfying shapes that defy the laws of physics. It's so interesting to put yourself in this place. I think a great exercise when looking at stuff like this is just like imagining yourself being there, like imagining what it would sound like, what it would feel like to be in this place. I think something that I really love about this level is this wall, this blue wall. What is it? It's blue, but it has like this moving texture to it. Is it supposed to be water? From afar it looks like water, but up close you can tell it's really not water. It has a reflectiveness to it that isn't consistent with water, and of course you can see water right next to it, and water definitely doesn't have the same properties or looks to it. So what is it? Is it like glass? I don't know. It would have to be a very strange type of glass to have light pass through it in that way. And of course it's animated, it has a texture running across it that is definitely not in sync with the water, so it definitely has kind of its own rhythm to it, which very firmly cements it as being something different from the water. So it's just very strange to look at, especially just when you look at it for a long time. Oh man, when you get like really close to it, it like, oh my god. Imagine like touching that wall and what it would feel like. I have no idea what that wall would feel like. Oh my god, the water just like looks so strange, like it flows into the wall. You can kind of see the light caustics from the water like phasing into the wall and whatever. That looks very strange. I don't know, would it be like smooth with those little like texture bits? Would they like feel like anything? I don't know, I'm having a very hard time comprehending this wall, but that's what makes it so interesting. Oh my god. You know, in the same way that there's like kind of those liminal spaces where it's like, you know, the back rooms where it's this tattered, grimy, I don't know, is it like an office building or whatever that like repeats forever or whatever. It kind of feels very strange to think that there's like this lived in space that repeats forever. It has this mundanity to it, but also this infinity, this incomprehensibleness to it, this like otherworldliness to it. And it's very strange combining those two things. I feel like this kind of does the opposite, where it takes like the concept of nature in all its infinity and otherworldliness, you know, like the nature and the universe, and it makes that look man-made. I feel like it kind of has that sense to it. Does that make sense? Okay, so I think we're gonna... What the fuck? Okay, we're back. So here we have another interesting skyscape, and it's part of like just a really interesting spot on this level. It's part of the B level. This whole like checkerboard area really makes me feel strange. It feels like Eraserhead, that David Lynch movie. There's literally a scene where the character, I think the character like falls asleep. It's been a while since I've seen it. It's like the character falls asleep and in their dream they just see like a checkered floor. Anyways, this whole friggin' area just feels so strange. Just this checkerboard design is such a strange choice. This is a space-themed game. It's so weird to think this is a space-themed game, but it's so, I don't know. Taking away the Mario-ness, like if you didn't know this wasn't a Mario game, you would probably never guess it was in a Mario game. And it's very strange because Mario has such a defined art style, but then this game, it kind of has a lot of, I don't know if I want to say mismatch or that it's like inconsistent or something, but you just see like this like springboard thing. It's so like kind of goofy. It's such a cartoony, like childish kind of thing, but then you look at like this hill and this sky and it's just so strange. And then just like this area back here, man, why does this corner make me feel so weird? I think maybe it's like the lighting. There's like, oh man, this is just a weird sight too. But I think just like put yourself here and imagine you just like sitting here for like 20 minutes, how weird that would make you feel. If you erase the context of this being like a Mario game where you're an Italian plumber who can jump like 10 feet into the air, imagine yourself as like a human like standing there and like how you would climb those. Just their existence in general defies explanation. Just this whole area defies explanation outside of it's a video game. I just think that's really interesting. Yeah, just like imagine the slope and imagine what it would be like to sit on the slope, but kind of lay your body against it and just like look out at the sky and how weird that would feel. Anyway, I think I've rambled on enough about this area. Let's move on to the final area, and I think it's probably my favorite just because, I don't know, it's the one I've spent the most time in, the one that gives me the most interesting thoughts. I don't know. Let's go. Okay, this is Beach Bowl Galaxy, the final area, and probably my favorite. Its vibes and its colors are so immaculate when you see it from the right angles. Just like I could just walk around and just like play photographer and like look at all this shit, like all day. I just even like these like floating islands and docks. These like strange circular floating islands, like they are made of sand and grass and flowers and stuff, and they have like docks and stuff, but they're perfectly circular and they're floating. They look almost like inflatables, but they are undeniably made of real earthly matter. They are simply both natural but also extremely artificial looking. Like they look like if the universe was made out of pool floaties. And I love looking at the water in this area, just like down at where the water spills out on the edge of the bowl. Another very strange feeling because you're looking through water and out into the infinite expanse of the sky. Of course, it's very strange to see water layered above sky. You know, water exists it sits on the ground, it sits on top of land or whatever. You don't look through water and see out the other end and see the sky. It's a very strange feeling. Oh yeah, let me show you something else that I like kind of discovered while I was just hanging out here. So I was kind of over in this area looking at stuff, and I was getting like kind of more shots, more like strange landscape shots. I got stuff like this. Again, just like land sloping down in ways that just doesn't make any sense. And just like conceptualizing if you were there, like the sense of vertigo you would get just like being in this location, like the strange survivalist sensations you would have. That's very interesting. But I was over here, I was just messing around. I was getting shots of like kind of these ground textures contrasted against the sky, and I recreated Bliss, which is like the Windows default background. I literally just accidentally kind of recreated that composition in Mario. Let's see if there's one more thing I can sort of look at. This This water, I don't know, it gives me just such a spectacular feeling seeing the horizon here cut off so abruptly. If you just saw this by itself, you just wouldn't immediately be able to parse this image and tell kind of what's going on. If you didn't have the caustics from the water kind of reflecting and giving you a sense of scale of how far this water stretches, you might be convinced that this stretches off into the horizon line, but it of course doesn't. You can tell that it very abruptly stops, and it's such a weird feeling seeing the water stop so abruptly. And same with the sand, if you can see the sand under the water just also abruptly stopping for no reason. It's like if someone took a sword and cut the world in half and you were just sitting on the edge and staring. I fucking love this game. Thank you, creators of this game, for making it and making this cool area and letting me look at it in first person and be a photographer. It's very, very cool. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm gonna just hang out here for a little while longer.